Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Java and Energy Hour here on Curious Sports Pulse. We are now on Twitch and on the Kick, whatever that means. I don't know. I was just informed of all of this. So we are excited to be on these two platforms, and we are excited to bring you our content any and every which way that we possibly can. So we're going to dive into what happened with the Indiana Fever and the Las Vegas Aces. I've told people from the beginning, I am excited for this WNBA season, and this is kind of everything you're looking for, especially in the quote off season in sports. In my opinion, there is no really such thing as an off season. Right. If you are of the belief, if you feel like there is an off season, what you're really saying is that there isn't football going on. But that's a story for another day. Either way, there is there's a lot going on in the WNBA. So for I think it's something of a completely tiring narrative for people to say, "Oh, who cares?" or it's just the WNBA. The basketball product itself is good if you are a fan of fundamental team basketball, and personally, I am. And now we get some of the star players. We have some really nice and interesting narratives and storylines. So I'm all for the WNBA. As a product, I'm a consumer. I'm a fan. If you're kind of stuck in that mindset of who cares or it's just dot dot dot, I think you should strongly consider giving it a second chance because what we saw last night was fantastic. But more on that in a bit. We're gonna talk about what Jaylen Brown said after the game. I don't necessarily love this Boston team, and we might have to dive into later at 4 p.m. We have Provide the Spark, our afternoon show. We're gonna kind of dive into the Boston game in more details then with some of our friends, but overall, I didn't necessarily love what Jaylen Brown said after the game. But again, more on that later. And then finally, first of all, though, Jrue Holiday. All of the criticisms surrounding this Boston Celtics team have been about concerns about what they would do come crunch time. What would they do in a close game, in a competitive game? Who's going to get the ball? And I think we have our answer now, or at least we have what the answer should be. Drew Holiday is by far and away the best player on this team past the 43-minute mark. If he has the ball in his hands, or if he is the primary defender in the given situation, then you do have to feel good about this Boston Celtics team. If, however, it's Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum at the end with the ball in their hands, and they need a bucket at the end, I feel far less confident. More likely than not, they're going to take a shot that is ill-advised, and more likely than not, they'll take a shot where if you're the defense, you kind of have to live with, okay, they just made a tough shot. So in terms of how I view this Boston team overall, I still don't like where they are in terms of the next matchup and in terms of they were they were down early. It looked like they kind of were about to phone it in. And again, can you blame them? No, not necessarily because it's human nature to want to and to or to feel like mentally you don't have to maybe give it your all, right? It's human nature to take something of a step back. So I think that's fair. That's not what I'm holding against them. Just in general, I don't love some of the things that we've been seeing from them all year, and I don't love their late game execution. But what we've seen now is if Drew Holiday is directly involved, then largely this team should be fine. Now the question is, does the team recognize it? Does the team recognize this? And are Tatum and Brown going to be willing to give up the ball late? I think they would be. I think that winning is the number one thing for them because through 3.5 quarters, Jason Tatum last night was brilliant. and he often is brilliant in games, but it's toward the end. Now, last night, he wasn't horrendous at the end of games like what we have seen in the past, but you have to admit when you watch how Jrue Holiday has continued to make pivotal and critical, crucial plays at the end. You have to admit that he is their best clutch player. He should be their go-to player at the end of games. And that is what unlocks the next level for this Boston team. That is their answer. That's at least that's what should be. That's what has to be their answer. Just at this point in the career, I think you can learn it. So, do some people have it more innately? Yes, absolutely. But I also think you can learn how to have this killer mindset, this killer mentality at the end as I button up my shirt. So I think that can be learned. That's something that can be improved upon, just like anything else. But that it takes you having a mental shift. It takes you practicing it a couple times, obviously in an in-game pressure scenario, and it takes you getting over a couple of mental barriers, a couple of mental hurdles. So, do I think it's likely to happen with either? Credit to Jaylen Brown. When it's not so much that he's afraid of the moment, where I'm not saying that Jason Tatum is, but I'm saying more times than not, it's you see him almost shrink in the bigger moments, and so that's what has led to this narrative of him of people saying that he just can't handle the big pressure situations. But with him specifically now, I think with Jaylen Brown specifically now, I don't think it's a question of he's afraid. I just think in my opinion, he's just too reckless. He's far too reckless for my liking in those big moments. So that's where I stand on this Boston Celtics team. I don't love them either way on how how things shape up in the NBA finals. I don't love it either way. But if Drew Holiday ends up being their go-to person, I'd be more than okay with that. And if he then happens to miss a decently open shot late in the paint, for example, and they lose a game because of that, you could live with that. That's gonna happen. But, you don't wanna see the same old of Jason Tatum taking a fadeaway 3 with a defender in his face, something of a Hail Mary. We've seen that too many times, it's not a good shot. Can you make that shot if you're a pro player at this level? Yes, but that's not sustainable, that's not a recipe for success in a seven-game series. So I think we saw what the answer needs to be for this team going forward, but time will tell. Now, moving forward, what Jaylen Brown said about the Indiana Pacers team, it's one thing to give lip service to the media after the game. It's one thing to kind of even give non-answers to reporters. And to be frank, I much prefer that from players, especially if it's a team that I'm rooting for or that have gambling slash betting interests on. Uh, right, I don't love when a player or when a team goes out of their way to compliment someone beyond the normal you can tell when it's just press conference talk or press conference speak. Like, "Oh, yeah, they're a good team, they defend hard, they have a winning culture." Yeah, I wanna hear that every time. I don't love when someone goes above and beyond or goes out of their way to compliment someone. That's just me, because I'd rather you're just focused on yourself and things aspects that you can improve on, aspects that you can change and improve. That's what I'd rather you'd be focused on rather than going out of your way to elevate your opponent. I think for me, that's a shift mentally that I think is needed in more athletes at all levels. So when Jaylen Brown says that the Indiana Pacers were playing like Michael Jordan or something, no, you let the foot off the gas mentally. You took a step back mentally, and then it took a huge comeback effort. That's what happened. Again, I don't so it wasn't the Indiana Pacers playing like Michael Jordan. It was the desperate team. that knew coming in they would be without their best player, and they put their best foot forward, and they gave you the first couple of punches. Now, that makes someone Michael Jordan-esque? I don't think so. I think that makes you a competitor-esque. So, the over the topness of the compliment here from Jaylen Brown, I think just shows and I told my good friends, E-Rock and No Earmuffs Joe, I told them that I would like to see them win something close down the stretch and that then I would start to consider changing my mind on this team. But when I then see something like this, it doesn't help, in my opinion. It doesn't help change the narrative of this is a team that really struggles to have an identity late. Now, I think they found it in Jrue Holiday, but that was only 1 game, so we'll see. But hopefully you see where I'm coming with this. This is a player who where both he and his teammate, it just looks completely disjointed too often at the end of games. So for them to have come out flat in the performance initially, and for them to have needed a large comeback against an Indiana Pacers team that isn't as talented regardless, let alone when they're without their best player, and then for you to elevate their performance and for you to explain it away as, yeah, just Michael Jordan stepped into the building today. What are you gonna do? We were lucky to get away with one." No, no. So even when you fill the criteria that I had for you of something that could possibly make me consider changing my mind about how I view you as a team, you're kind of showing and you're kind of, projecting all of the reasons of why I feel the way that I do about you in the first place. So, am I reading too much into a quote? It's possible, but I don't think so because the mentality, the attack, the approach of an athlete, especially at this stage, is so important and so critical. And I think this kind of goes to show not only my concerns about this team, but also my concerns about the limit and the ceiling of who they can be. Now this year, is it possible, right, they kind of right, you played Miami Heat, you played Cleveland Cavaliers, now you're gonna play the Pacers, all limited in terms of, um, who is available, who was 100%, etcetera. So, am I going to hold that against them? No. No. If they win the if they play the Dallas Mavericks or the Minnesota Timberwolves and they win a 7-game series, right, I wouldn't count that. I wouldn't say that's a Mickey Mouse ring, and I wouldn't hold and you can't hold the playoff schedule against them for how it shaped up, okay? That would be completely unfair. But what you can do is still have those same concerns and those same valid criticisms that you have of this team, depending on how the rest of the playoffs shake out. So I think that there are still a lot of questions to be asked. I don't think anyone's being a hater. I just think a reasonable person, when you're evaluating this team, has to say talented, a lot of potential, great regular season team. Do they have it when it counts, when they're tested? Yesterday was an indication that maybe they're starting to turn the page possibly, but based off of everything I just said, I've been on the record of saying I need to see you prove me wrong 3 times before I consider reevaluating. I'll count that as a halftime, honestly. So we're at point 5 now on my road to 3 for this season. Moving on, the WNBA. Shout out to the WNBA, a packed slate yesterday. Now granted, aren't aren't as many teams, but that doesn't matter. We had 5 solid games yesterday on the schedule. We're gonna obviously focus on Chicago and Connecticut, and the Indiana, Las Vegas game. Let's go with Chicago first. I love what Angel Reese said after the game. So, she took a pretty bad foul from Thomas, and immediately everyone, I think, correctly compared it to I think it was the same player, I can't remember. Someone correct me, let me know in the chat if I'm thinking of the same player or if it was just another hard foul, but Caitlin Clark took a hard one too. Now, in my opinion, the foul that Angel Reese took was much harder and had the potential to be a little more devastating. That's just how I view it. But regardless, it they were both, they were both not basketball plays, and Thomas was ejected from the game, rightfully so. And I don't want to discuss Caitlin Clark and how she's reacted in the past to similar situations. That's not what this is about today. And so I just want to focus on Angel Reese and what she said. I don't have the quote in front of me, so this is going to be a rough paraphrase, but she more or less said that, "Hey, I'm in the WNBA now. I don't care that I'm a celebrity. I'm a rookie just like anyone else." And so she wasn't upset, and she more or less said that she was well within her right to do what she did, and the refs, I think she wasn't displeased by the outcome in terms of the ejection, but she basically said, "That's gonna happen, and that's part of the game." And I love that. I love that because she is someone who has a lot of outgoing energy, who stands out, who ha has a large off-court presence, and also who some have said, I think incorrectly, I think this is unfair, but some have said that she has some antics, right? Runs her mouth too much. I don't agree with that at all. But you get what I'm saying. She has a very loud personality. I don't know why I didn't just say that. She has a very loud personality, and I love it. But most importantly, I love this level of competitive fiber where you're not asking for calls, you're not asking for special treatment, and you're not we've seen star players before off the NBA who, when they've been a star, when they've been a veteran, and something doesn't go the way they quite want it to, where they then are almost demanding post-game that the league does something. And that mindset, that mentality ultimately hurts the overall product, the game, and if the roles were ever flipped, or if the roles were ever reversed, you wouldn't want it, right? You would want something in terms of play on or it's part of the game, whatever. So this is why I really love her mindset, I really love what she said, and I think this is something that the way she handled this specific scenario, forget that she's playing really well and is currently, the clear-cut rookie of the year, in my opinion. Forget that, but that's something that will earn her that further respect, not just among her teammates but also her peers across the league. Now, Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever, they were up for a little bit. They were looking good against Las Vegas Aces. It wasn't a complete blowout, at first, but ultimately, Las Vegas got in a rhythm, and then you could almost watch them turn on that switch or flip the switch and say, all right, enough playing around, here we go, let's get it done." And this is kind of what concerned me in regards to the Indiana Fever, is that they would get in games, they would have all this outside media attention, deservedly so, but that when it got to the games, it takes a while to get a winning culture. Winning is a habit. both individually and as a team. And Caitlin Clark is so used to being the primary and being by far and away the only option in terms of being ball centric, as she should at Iowa, right? She was a lot of times the offense, although we're seeing now that, Kate Martin, not too bad herself. But anyway, you get the point here, is that she's used to having the ball in her hands a lot and being a volume shooter and taking shots that others should not even consider taking, but she can make them. Sometimes they go in and sometimes she gets hot, but if not, then it can get ugly. And I said yesterday what I'd want to see going forward is for 3 to 4 players to have about the same amount of shots and for players to have the amount of points scored match their field goal attempts. So Caitlin Clark takes 8 shots, she finishes 2 for 8, 2 of 5 from 3, and she finishes with 8 points. And again, that's the standard that most basketball analysts and most basketball coaches go by. You wanna at least match the points scored to field goals attempted. Why? Because this kind of takes into consideration 2s, 3s, and free throw attempts, you getting fouled. And it's a good general rule of thumb. So, she matched it, and she did I think she's doing better too in terms of not always looking to force and getting her teammates involved. Um, if we're gonna evaluate strictly for passing and court vision right now, I would give it a B plus, A minus, right? Room for improvement as always, but it's good. It's good. So and she finished with 7 assists, also 6 turnovers, so either way, we're not gonna over focus on one game against the Las Vegas Aces. That's not what the point is. The point is through 7 games, we've seen that she can be special at this level, but we've also seen the limitations of how she's used to playing and how they've been running their offense. And the best is when her teammates are able to be more involved and when they run a little more, two-man action. Saying two-man, for lack of a better word, two-player, a little two-player action is particularly between her and Leah Boston. And I've said that this will allow more teammates to get in a rhythm, to feel more involved, and to it's everyone needs to stay healthy, but particularly if you are if your teammates with a volume shooter at the point guard position, it's that much more important mentally to stay ready, and it's that much harder to stay ready when you know that you probably won't be touching the ball and able to get in rhythm like what you probably should be able to in the natural flow of a game. So we'll see. That's what I think the path forward for this Indiana Fever team needs to be, but we'll see, we'll see. It's a process, and I think people that are just saying that Boston's letting her down or that it's Aaliyah Boston to blame, I think that's a lazy narrative. It's hard, it's just this is a season where we need to see and this needs to be a period of adjustment for both the Indiana Fever as a whole and Caitlin Clark individually. So, was anyone shocked that they lost to the Las Vegas Aces? No, and should we be alarmed that she only scored 8 points? No, in some ways, I was almost encouraged that she only took 8 shots. Didn't love that it was 2 of 5, though. I would like to see the shot selection in general just be better, more consistent, and then if they fall, we can live with missed shots. But that's where I stand with Caitlin Clark right now. And now let's go to the Las Vegas Aces. I mean, they're the favorites. A lot of people are expecting them to win for a reason. Asia Wilson showed why she's special, why she's a force to be reckoned with. I mean, you finished with 29 and 15. You're probably doing something right, and then Kelsey Plum, just the way energy, the bounce in her step, the flow that she has in her game, it's so much fun to watch. Now, I'm gonna hold pulling her to the same standard. Don't love that it was 3 of 10 from 3. Don't necessarily love that. Finishes 7 of 18 from the field with 20 points. So she meets the criteria, she meets the standard. I think if she's, honest with also 7 assists, 1 turnover though, that's the critical thing. But, if she's honest with herself, she probably would admit that, some of those shots, not that they were forced or rushed, but could have maybe found a better shot selection there. That was terrible English, but you get the point. Overall, they're gonna be fine, and then, like I said earlier, Kate Martin, I mean, she showed that remember she went to the WNBA draft to support Caitlin Clark ends up being picked, and she showed that she also belongs at this level. And to my point earlier, finishes 3 of 5 from the field with 12 points, so double her field goals attempted, over 2x field goals attempted, 2 points produced. So, really efficient night, 22 minutes played, 7 rebounds, couple couple really nice hustle plays. So, Kate Martin belongs. Las Vegas Aces are still the main threat, and the New York Liberty, not to get on a complete side, quest right now, but the New York Liberty need to figure some stuff out. Alright, that's all the time we have for right now here at Curious Sports Pulse. But we will be back on with our afternoon show at 4 PM Eastern Standard Time.